Everyone said he had no future, a simple laborer with nothing but wind in his pockets. But David found a secret tucked between the pages of an old book, one that even the wealthiest men in town had never discovered. A secret that began not with luck, but with a simple formula scrawled on a paper napkin: the miracle of 1%. David was 22 years old. His hands always smelled of fresh-cut wood. He had recently left his father's farm behind and was searching for big dreams amid the tall walls of a city lumber mill. But every day at 5 o'clock, when the end-of-shift bell rang, instead of heading home, David made his way to the only quiet refuge in the city: the library. He went not to read history or philosophy, but to see Laura. Laura, with her calm and steady gaze, was the only person who never looked at David as just a common laborer. One rainy afternoon, Laura pulled a book from the donated books shelf. Its leather cover was worn and cracked, but when she handed it to David, it was as though she were entrusting him with a jewel. "I think this book was looking for you," she said. On the first page, in a trembling hand, someone had written, "Wealth has no loud voice. Wealth is the result of a small beginning and an unceasing continuation." Below it, David encountered a word for the first time, a word that struck like a spark in the dark: compound interest. The book said that even 1% held the power to build an empire, provided you knew how to unlock its hidden door. That night, David didn't close his eyes. The words of the book pulsed through his mind like a heartbeat. Early the next morning, before heading to the mill, he spotted Laura at the library door. His eyes were red from sleeplessness, yet they shone. "I think I understand why you gave me this book," he said. Laura smiled, a smile that washed away every trace of his exhaustion. "Because I knew you, like me, were searching for a way to build a great life, a way others simply cannot see." That week, when David received his wages, instead of spending every cent on debts and daily bread, he did something strange. He set aside exactly 1%. The amount was so small, he laughed at himself, perhaps just enough to buy an extra loaf of bread. But David had made himself a promise, without exception, every week, on time. Laura did the same with her modest librarian's pay. Together, they bought a small pocket notebook, a notebook destined to witness the greatest secret of their lives. They wrote their numbers side by side, not to boast to anyone, but to prove something to themselves, that what begins from almost nothing with the power of persistence truly begins to grow. They did not yet know that soon the first great test of their lives would challenge that small 1%. When winter arrived, the wheels of the lumber mill froze and the doors were shut. David lost his job, and suddenly those few meager coins became his only possession. In those hard days, he didn't even have enough money to heat his small room. But he and Laura had an unwritten agreement. No storm would ever reach that 1%. Instead of sitting in warm cafes or buying gifts for each other, they walked through the falling snow in the park. David, his hands red from the cold, pulled 2 crumpled dollars from his pocket and held them out to Laura, every cent he had earned shoveling snow from neighbors' yards. Laura looked at him with pride. "I know it's hard, David," she said, "but we are working for the future. This notebook is the first brick of our home together." One afternoon, while David and Laura were browsing a second-hand goods sale looking for a few cheap tools, they came across an old man whose pressed but worn suit set him apart from the crowd. Mr. Bennett, a man who had spent years reading the pulse of numbers on the Capital Stock Exchange. When he happened to notice David's little notebook and overheard their conversation about a few cents, he smiled and stepped forward. He didn't say their effort was pointless, but what he said sent a shiver through David. "Kids, saving money isn't enough. Right now, these coins are like idle soldiers sleeping in a barracks. You need to put them to work. Mr. Bennett pulled a paper napkin from his pocket, borrowed David's carpenter's pencil, and began sketching a few simple diagrams. "This is the quiet miracle," he said. "If you plant this small money in the right place, it grows by itself. Interest builds on interest, and after a while, it's your money sweating for you, not you sweating for your money." David stared at those simple lines on the napkin. All the hardships of the mill suddenly faded before this magical formula. Mr. Bennett showed them how to invest in a few small, reliable local businesses. From that day on, the famous 1% became 3%, then 5%. At last, the day of reckoning arrived. David stood before Mr. Harrison, Laura's father, in a pressed but old shirt, asking for permission to marry her. Mr. Harrison looked him up and down and said with a smirk, "David, you're a good boy, but love doesn't put bread on the table. You have no land, not even a small shop. I won't entrust my daughter to a man with nothing but a few crumpled dollars in his pocket." David reached into his pocket and quietly placed the small, worn notebook on the table. Mr. Harrison opened it with reluctance, but his eyes locked onto the neat columns of numbers. Numbers that had begun with a few cents had now grown into something far larger. He understood that David had built a system that, within a few years, no one in this town would come close to matching. David smiled. "I'm just a carpenter, but I learned a secret that wealthy men call compound interest. I didn't just save. With Mr. Bennett's guidance, I invested those 1% deposits into the shares of small, growing local workshops. The profits from that money became capital again, and that capital earned more profit." Mr. Harrison looked at Laura, who stood beside David with quiet pride. He closed the notebook, drew a long breath, and said, "I thought you had no future, but I see now you built the future a long time ago." Married, not with a lavish celebration that would devour everything they had saved, but with the simple ceremony. Years passed. David was now the owner of the largest carpentry workshop in the region, not because of luck, but because of that same napkin formula. One evening, David took the old yellowed book from the shelf. On the first page, beside the words of its previous owner, he added his own. 1% is enough if you never stop. He placed the book in his son's hands, because he knew the greatest inheritance he could leave behind was not money, but the knowledge of patience and the power of a small beginning.